Hello, I'm Layla, and I was betrayed by those I trusted most. Let me take you back to the start of it all. Picture a life that seemed quite perfect on the surface. I was married to a man I thought was my soulmate, living a life many would dream of. However, that dream was shattered when I stumbled upon a secret that would change my life forever. One seemingly ordinary day, I overheard a clandestine conversation. The voices were unmistakable, my husband and my mother-in-law. They were plotting, scheming, planning to steal something that was rightfully mine. The inheritance I received from my late parents, a considerable $7 million, was their target. The people who were supposed to be my family, my protectors, were in fact my biggest adversaries. I felt a chill run down my spine as the gravity of the betrayal hit me. The trust I had placed in them was not just broken, it was shattered into a million pieces. The pain was unbearable, and for a moment I felt as if I was drowning in a sea of despair. The shock of the revelation left me reeling, and I was desperate to make sense of it all. But as I processed the heartbreak, I felt a spark ignite within me, the spark of resilience and determination. I was devastated, yes, but I was not defeated. The shock of betrayal quickly turned into a resolve to fight back. I knew I had to stand up, not just for myself, but for every person who'd ever been wronged by those they trusted. I was devastated, but little did they know I was far from defeated. I confronted them, demanding answers, but their response was far more brutal than I could have ever imagined. I hoped that there would be some semblance of remorse, perhaps an explanation that would make their actions seem less cruel. But instead, I was met with cold indifference and harsh laughter. I remember the chilling silence that hung in the room after I laid my accusations before them. My husband, the man whom I had trusted and loved, looked at me with a cold, calculating gaze. His mother, the woman who had welcomed me into their family, wore a smug smile that spoke volumes of their betrayal. The air was heavy with tension, a storm was brewing, and I was at its epicenter. The confrontation escalated. Voices were raised, harsh words were exchanged. I stood my ground, refusing to back down, my resolve fueled by righteous indignity. But then the unthinkable happened. My husband, in a fit of rage, lashed out violently. I remember a sharp pain, a cry of shock, and then darkness, a black void that swallowed me whole, a terrifying abyss that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. A brutal attack, a shocking violation of trust, and a devastating reminder of the treachery that had led me to this point. I was left unconscious, my body bruised and battered, my spirit crushed but not defeated. The world continued to spin, oblivious to my plight, as I lay on the cold, hard floor of my own home, a victim of the very people who were supposed to protect me. It was a rude awakening, a harsh lesson in trust, deception, and the price of naivety. I woke up in the hospital, my life forever changed. I was no longer the trusting, innocent woman I had once been. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman scorned, and I was ready to fight back. As I lay in that hospital bed, I made a vow. They had taken everything from me, but they wouldn't take my spirit. The pain was unbearable, a constant reminder of their betrayal, but it also fueled my resolve. I was not just a victim, I was a survivor, and survivors fight back. My first step was to gather evidence. I started to dig into every transaction, every conversation, every lie that my husband and mother-in-law had spun around me. It was a daunting task, but I had a fire within me that their brutality could not extinguish. I was determined to expose their fraudulent schemes and misconduct, to prove that their greed had cost them their humanity. I knew it wouldn't be easy. They had their wealth, their power, their influence, but I had something they didn't. I had my integrity, I had my truth. And those, I realized, were the most potent weapons I could wield. They had taken my inheritance, they had tried to take my life, but they could not take away who I was. I knew that my fight was only just beginning. I started my investigation. Every secret they thought they'd buried, I unearthed. The betrayal was deeper than I had initially imagined. My husband, the man I had trusted implicitly, was at the heart of it all. He had meticulously planned for this, weaving a web of lies and deceit. And his mother, she was his partner in crime, a silent accomplice, watching as I was stripped of my inheritance. I dug deeper, poring over bank statements, emails, phone records, and legal documents. I found irregularities, discrepancies that pointed to their fraudulent activities. They had thought they were clever, but their actions left traces, breadcrumbs that led me to the truth. My husband had transferred large sums from my account to offshore accounts. He had created a shell company, a facade to mask his activities, and to think, this was the man I had shared my life with, the man I had loved. His mother, too, was no innocent. She had signed off on documents, providing the legal cover he needed for his schemes. Each piece of evidence I found was another nail in their coffin. Each document, each transaction, was a testament to their greed and betrayal. It was overwhelming, the enormity of their deceit. But it fueled me, gave me the strength to continue. Because I knew, with each piece of evidence, I was one step closer to justice. I took meticulous notes, documenting every detail. I knew I had to be thorough, leaving no room for doubt. I had to build an irrefutable case, one that would stand up in court. I was not just fighting for my inheritance, but for my dignity, for my truth. I had the truth on my side, and it was time to expose them. The night of the gala arrived. It was time for their charade to end. Underneath the gleaming chandeliers and amidst the chatter of high society, I stood up, my heart pounding, my palms slick with perspiration. My voice, strong and clear, cut through the hum of conversation. I began to expose my husband and his mother's duplicity, their dark conspiracy that had nearly cost me my life. I revealed how they had plotted to steal my $7 million inheritance, how they had turned my world into a living nightmare, a facade of love masking deep-seated greed. As I spoke, I could see the color drain from their faces. Shocked gasps filled the room as I presented the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. I laid out the facts, the transactions, the secret meetings, the whole dirty scheme that had been hatched in the shadows. I held my head high, my voice steady, as I narrated the horrifying ordeal that I had endured, the betrayal that had shattered my trust. The room was engulfed in a deafening silence, the atmosphere heavy with shock and disbelief. The eyes of the crowd bore into my husband and his mother, their faces pale, their expressions a blend of fear and guilt. I could see the realization dawn on them. Their game was up. The room fell silent, their guilt laid bare for all to see. In the end, justice prevailed. The evidence I painstakingly gathered led to the arrest of my husband and his conniving mother. Their faces of shock and disbelief as the handcuffs were slapped on their wrists was a sight I'll never forget. The courts ruled in my favor. The $7 million inheritance that was rightfully mine returned to me. But the triumph was not just about the money. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self. I used my experience not as a crutch, but as a stepping stone, a catalyst for change. I began to advocate for victims of domestic and financial abuse. I made it my mission to educate others about the importance of financial literacy, about the need to be vigilant in relationships, to be cautious about who we trust. Through all the deceit and brutality, I found my purpose. I found resilience within myself, a strength that was forged in the flames of adversity. I became a beacon for others who were lost in the darkness of betrayal and abuse, showing them that it was possible to rise, to fight, to triumph. My journey was a painful one, but it taught me the strength I never knew I had. I am Layla, and I am a survivor.